morning to you. Today is Friday, April 17th, 2026. My name is Francisco Gaffney, and this is my daily streaming all about governance, risk, compliance, and advisory boards. And I just go straight into the model today. We have been covering this model the whole week. Is the advisory board operating system in practice. So on Monday, we talked about the top of the model here. There was the commercial acceleration. On Tuesday, we went through the growth and capital requirements. And Wednesday was all about resilience. And yesterday, we talked about on the left side, which is a transformation, reinvention, and innovation, right? So today, we are going to wrap up into how the whole operating model works. And the reason why is an operating system. This is called the advisory board operating system, is because from the assets lens, we have to see our organizations as a full integrated body. And sometimes you see your business as whatever is the next fire in front of you. Could be month end, could be quarter end, could be year end, could be tax season, could be many things. The new initiative, why the things are not working, can be many things, but there is a reason why things can be identified very quickly when you have this model in place, because you start to see how the parts of the organization start to interact within each other, and how one part that is not working, you can start quickly make the map where is the problem, the bottleneck, or the circumstances that actually doesn't allow that particular section is not really working as it's supposed to. So this is the board's, the executive team, and the founder's ability to connect the revenue assets with the capital assets, with the system assets, and the strategy assets into a single operating logic, right? So this is operating logic. So when you have all this in place, you can start to do better strategies. You can have a better understanding how your people work and what they do, how they do it. Not to judge them, not to demand more what they need to do. It's just to understand if they are in the right place, for example. So probably you hired people for a project a couple of months ago, a couple of years ago, and now you see why the performance is not where it should be, why the people are not working in the place, why they are not delivering the way that they have to deliver. And I remember a very specific case here where very, very skilled people were hired for a very particular function in terms of distribution outreach in an organization, right? So they went to the market, they built all the distribution system in terms of value-added resellers, distributors, I mentioned resellers, licensing, etc. And they were very good networking, encouraging the network, cheering the partners to say, or the distributors to say, yeah, let's go and let's get together and gain business together, etc. So they were very good people connectors doing that job. When the network or the partner ecosystem system or the distribution system, as it's called, was built a couple of years later, they said, great, so we don't need you anymore in that position. We are going to reshape the organization and we are going to put you as a direct sales person, right? So as a account executive or growth specialist, you name it. So all these fancy names about literally being a salesperson, right? Knocking down to doors, literally, like building pipelines, building outreaching, etc., etc. So what was the challenge? They were very good in their job as a salespeople in the very specific area, which was networking, distribution, and ecosystem of sales channel, right? When they were into direct sales, there was a massive challenge because they were not the type of personality and the stamina, if you may, to go in direct sales, cold calling, if you may. And that was a pretty challenge that actually destroyed a lot of the good talent of the organization. So people were quitting, the performances went to the floor, there were constant underachievement in terms of quarter ends, etc., etc. So if you understand this, more initiative for that type of person, for example, this sales team, that actually their skills were very, very useful and magnificent 2 years earlier, today you see the sales team and say, well, who hired these people? I said, it's not a problem who hired them. It's actually, are they in the right function, even when the company evolved to the next level, right? So the real job here is not reviewing separate slides, is not reacting to separate crises, not hoping separate work streams somehow add up. So the biggest risk highlight of this week is when the things start to drift, right? So when you have the teams or the capacities that actually are going in one direction, they're absolutely fantastic, and all of a sudden start to drift into where we're going, why the things are not happening as we suppose, or we planned, or we thought that I would go. So the growth start to drift, the capital start to drift because you're draining money and actually you're not getting the results that you're looking for. The controls start to drift because I say, who is responsible for this now? The transformation itself, or the innovation, or the access to market, or to the new relevancy to what is going on in the market, start to drift, and then you start to have too many initiatives that actually are not relevant to the market, but actually are pretty much reactions trying to catch up. So a board or executive team, or you as a founder that lead with value creation starts when the drift stops, right? So when you start to lead with value, then these things seems to be floating around at the mercy of the weather, put it that way, start to stop, because they say, no, this is our course now, this is what we have to do and where we have to go. And I gave yesterday two very good examples about a radical change, like Allbirds, the shoemaker, that now they decided to go and be an AI platform. They said, well, this have to do from a manufacturing sport environment to a high IT software and hardware company. Or the other example I gave is when Steve Jobs in the 90s, 97, I think, came back to Apple and reduced the production line by 75%. And they focus into relevancy, into what is going to be our customer needs in the coming years. So again, this is where I come in as a board advisor, by the way. So I build a rotating international advisory board that operates on this operating system that you have in front of you. So around the milestones in front of your company. So you get the specialist capability you need in a fraction of the time of hiring one executive, without the big consulting overhead, without the talent locking, and with the option to swap members every 6 months as the project evolves. Now, let's take a look at three problems when we are looking in this operating system in the big picture. I'm going to use the UK examples because they are public first. They are very thorough in terms of how they do the research and the frameworks and the guidance and the reports. And these are business principles that translate from large corporations, and you can do exactly the same in your teams. You don't need to go into the complexity of these large corporations. Probably you don't have the skills, resources, and budgets, but the business principle at the end is the same. So, and remember that we are in a society today that actually you had to offer something in exchange of something else. So the mechanics of that is exactly the same. If you boil it down to the simplest point of view, it's like I have a pen, you have a pair of glasses, and I need a pen, you need glasses, we swap things, and this you can say that, well, I have money and I have a pen, so we swap products in exchange of capital, right? Or money. So the principle is the same. Now, how complex that could be is another story. But at the end, if you understand these principles, and I oversimplify, obviously, but if you understand the business principles I'm going to mention now, then pretty much you can translate to your own organization. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel. It's already there. Just like, oh, I can put some of these things in practice in my own organization, and I can make the difference that I'm looking for and stop that drifting. So those, okay, I can go this direction now. So the first problem that I wanted to mention today is that the governance expectations are firmer now than ever. And I don't know in your jurisdictions, in your country, if you're watching outside the UK, but actually in the UK in January 1st this year, the Financial Reporting Council has applied a provision 29. And what the provision 29 says is they ask boards or executive teams or entrepreneurs to make a declaration on the effectiveness of their material internal controls. So now the Financial Reporting Council is asking for a declaration of effectiveness of their material internal controls, meaning actually how good are you managing your company. That means that boards or executive teams or you as a founder need evidence, not just only confidence, not just only a narrative. You need to provide evidence of how effective are you managing your organization, right? So that's a problem because many times companies had these management teams or these executive teams, C-suites as they call it, or the founder, and they didn't measure how effective they were in their jobs, right? On their delivery, in their capacities. They were very good monitoring KPIs or performances, etc., which is absolutely fantastic, and they have to do that. But at the same time, it's like a self-reflection. How effective are we doing the things that we're doing, right? And it's not just about a reflection anymore. They have to provide evidence. Now, if you say, how this applied to me, that I have nothing to do with a publicly listed company, I say, is it good thinking to say, hey, I am the owner, I know that I have to do things, but how effective I am doing the things that I'm doing, right? As an executive member of the executive team, as a founder, as a non-executive director. So that self-reflection, even if you have a company of, 10 employees, 15, 20 employees, is a good reflection because actually that will reflect how far you can go with your organization. Now, the second problem is investor patience and impatient, actually, or patient. Let's put it patient. PwC report says that investors focused in UK companies are sending a clear message now. So the message is transformation first, growth second. So they are reallocating capital to companies that can demonstrate real transformation, credible value creation, and resilience. And this is something that we spoke all this week. So how you transform your company, we spoke about that yesterday, and how you create value and the resilience, we spoke about on Wednesday. So you see how this model is already aligned because it's using the business principles that any organization should have anyways. But now investors are looking specifically for this. How predictable is your revenue? How repeatable is your revenue? How you build options for your organization? How you how you capitalize your intellectual properties? So this is when we're talking about demonstrating the real transformation, credible value creation, IP, patents, productization of your IPs, and resilience in terms of what is a governance, risk and compliance processes where you can be dominating your space because you have the processes and system plus the transformation or the innovation or the edge to be relevant to your customers, suppliers, and with your services and products 3 months down the line, 6 months down the line, by the end of the year, next year, etc., etc. So you're still in the market and you have repeatability and credibility and predictability of all that things. And the third problem that I identify now is the productivity backdrop. And this is coming from the from the Office for National Statistics and also the Office for Budget Responsibility. The productivity is decreasing, incredibly decreasing. And this is the output per hour that measure the Office for National Statistics. They say that the flash labor survey last year was 0.5% lower than the prior years, right? So what is going on? And actually, also the Office for Budget Responsibility cuts the underlying in 1% less productivity. So what this is statistics, by the way. These are done by the reputable governing bodies, and you might have similar statistics in your country, your jurisdiction, etc., or your industry. But what all this means is a tougher productivity environment, you're paying for motion, you're getting proof that you're producing more, or at the level that you should produce. And when we talk about productivity, it's a fine line between this reporting in terms of performance, in terms of KPIs, etc. So we are not talking about this. We are talking about actually how we come. Just one question, just that you can put in your teams today. Say, how we come that actually we have a decrease in productivity when tools like AI supposedly is helping us to be more productive, but actually the output per hour seems to be that actually is decreasing the productivity. So what is going on, right? And the budgets and the increase of capacities in terms of investment for AI and tools and software and development, etc., is going higher, higher, higher in the budget. But on the other hand, you have a national body and a budget responsibility body making surveys and establishing that the productivity per hour is decreasing. So is this not something to start to consider in our organization? It's a good question, because actually you start to see, hold on a second, how we establish a benchmark of which is our productivity, and instead of rolling the whole thing up in your organization, let's put one department or two departments that we believe are the less impact, would produce a less risk, to test AI to see if that really makes a difference in our organization, and then roll it out on the rest of the organization, and not make a massive budget and then go on crazy on AI and finally understand that actually the output per hour doesn't change, actually decreased. Anyway, so these are the kind of things that we start to think about when you look into the organization as a whole, because you start to look into not only one specific thing on the next fire, you start to look into how things are already happening inside your house. It's not the things that are going outside and trying to conquer the world. It's to see, it's an assessment of also to understand what is going on in your own house and say, are we prepared to the things that we plan to do? Our productivity, our teams, our allocation, like I mentioned, these specialists that they were, or these talents that were hired 2 years ago for a specific task. The companies changed the direction of their business or their job output in terms of what they needed them to do, and pretty much the productivity collapsed. Oh, it didn't collapse, but actually in terms of what they were doing to whatever today is that they're doing, you have a massive impact in productivity, in people's, the NPS, the surveys, the employee satisfaction, they were very bad. 2 years later, were absolutely astonishing, because everybody was very, very happy doing the job that they were doing. But in terms of this output per hour today, it decreased, because actually they are not happy doing the job that they are doing. Actually, perhaps they feel this, they have this, how it's called, is a golden handcuff, right? They're too good to leave this organization, but they are not happy doing the job, and they know they are doing a job halfway, because their specialty, their skill, their capacity, their network is somewhere else. It's not doing the thing that they are doing today. Anyways, I don't want to make this a big drama, but actually just to understand where things start to drift and how you have already information that can be useful for your company right away. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel, as I mentioned earlier. So in other words, imagine a board or executive team, or you as a founder operating with a system that is like a gearbox in your car, right? So if you are not probably this is a very easy example. So a gearbox in a car transfer the power of the engine to the transmission to the wheels, right? So it's engine, gearbox, transmission, wheels. Now, which is the critical point here is how you graduate that power to whatever is a function that the car is going. If you need to go faster, probably you're going to go into a lower gearbox, lower gears. If you want to power and push and torque, you use the big gears, right, in the gearbox. Now, you might have a wonderful car, a wonderful transmission, the best tires, But if the gears do not connect cleanly to whatever is the requirements that you have when they need to accelerate, when they need to decrease the speed, etc., etc., the power never reaches to the road properly, right? So probably I'm going to technical into mechanics, but apologies for that. But actually, that's pretty much the thing. So it's about how you gear things up and down according to your requirements. So if you cannot gear up and down according to your requirements, yeah, you might have a fantastic team, as I mentioned. You have a team that literally built the whole channel partners and distribution systems in 2 years. But when you put it into a sales team, a direct sales team, they were in the wrong gear with the same power. So the results were very poor comparatively. That doesn't mean that they didn't achieve their quotas. It means actually the results comparable were very poor. Now, so as a board advisor, then what would you like me to tell you how I can help you? With three things first for today's topic. The first thing is to force these four questions into a rhythm in your organization. What are we scaling? What are we funding? Or how are we funding this scaling? What must stay resilient while we do it, and where we reinvent to stay ahead, right? So with these four questions, pretty much you cover the whole model. And when those questions live together, the board starts to see cause and effect. And I don't mean cause and effect in terms of karma. I mean, actually, we are very clear what we have to do. That's a cause, and the effect will be results and revenue with a high profit, right? Because you don't want a bigger revenue with a lower margin. You want, if the revenue increase, you want the margin increase proportionate to your revenue increase. The second thing is to improve explanation of quality. So the Financial Reporting Council is clear that comply or explain words only when explanations are full, meaningful, and transparent enough for stakeholders to judge them properly, right? So when you are explaining things, you have to do it properly, because, or you're complying, because comply is pretty much a checkbox exercise. But if you have to explain, you have to be clear enough and meaningful enough so people can judge properly what you're doing. So that mindset should not be limited to annual report wording. It should shape board thinking all year around, or your executive team all year around, or you as a founder all year around. So the third thing is to match capability to milestone, right? So PwC says that 61% of the UK CEOs feel increased scrutiny on their leadership, and a third of them question whether they have the right team around them. And we spoke about this already. So are we going to make a big initiative and it's failing? Or this sales team that I mentioned earlier, very good building channel and partners, so cold calling, right? It doesn't mean that they don't have the skills and the capacity, but actually it's already established by surveys, by organizations like PwC, and we see the national statistics, that actually sometimes it's not about giving more training, giving more team building, giving more incentives, or this spiff. They say, we're going to have an amazing spiff this quarter. And people go like, yay, I don't really mind because I don't like to do my job. They don't say it openly, but actually you start to feel it. If you're managing a sales team before, or a team that had to go out to the market, you probably have that feeling. You see the team meetings and people go, yeah, let's go and do it. The next day, the energy level is back to zero, even if they have a massive spiff in front of them, right? So be careful of that thing. Sometimes it's not the initiatives, it's the people around you. And doesn't mean that it's a bad people, because as I mentioned, nobody gets up in the morning trying to fail. It's because probably they are in the wrong place. They have the skills, the capacity, the resources, the networking, but they are in the wrong place. And sometimes it's not even them. It's the organization that failed in terms of allocating them in the right places. Or perhaps they started in the right places and then the organization shift direction and drag the people into a direction that they were not hired for. I'm not saying anything else. Actually looking around you first before start to blame the market, blaming the economy, blaming the technology. look around what's going on around your own organization in terms of skills, capacities, and resources. So one question you can ask today is, how does the board or the executive team or yourself as a founder develop that capability around the table without overhiring, overpaying, or overcommitting, right? Now, so how can I help? In terms of business outcomes, I help boards or executive teams or founders to turn disconnected priorities into a single operating system. So as a whole, as a model that we have here. So scale, capital, resilience, and reinvention support each other instead of fighting to each other. In terms of differentiators, I build a rotating international advisory board around the milestones in front of your company. So that gives the board specialist capability faster than hiring a single executive without a consulting overhead or the talent locking into the organization. As I mentioned, these very skilled team members that are very skilled in building networks, not very good sales cold calling people. And this is talent locking. So you're locking your talent in something that actually they are not skilled enough, or they are, it's not their expertise, put it that way. In terms of risk reductions, the members of the advisory board can be changed every 6 months as the business moves. So expertise keeps pace with the board agenda, and the company avoids carrying the wrong capability for too long. So we apply our same advice into our own setups, just to make sure that actually we are not with a static team for 2 or 3 years in something that actually the company evolves. We need new skills, new capacities, new networks, new referenceability on the things that we do and how we do it, to make sure that the company growth scale is more predictable and have the governance risk and compliant requirements in place. Now, one action you can take home today, and it's doable in 30 minutes or less. Before your next meeting or your next cycle of meetings starts, put one session in the diary called Value Creation System Review, and ask your teams to present what is growth, what is capital, what are the controls, and what is the transformation they're looking for in one page with one set of decisions, business outcomes, right? So these 4 things is going to give you already the blueprint of your future if you put it right in the right place. Now, let's pause here for today and reconvene next week. Have a fantastic weekend.